Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and in my last video I showed you the Greg Kidd interview that I did. Now, the company that Greg Kidd has invested in is called Link2, and that's Linqto. And I told you that these guys are offering what they call an SPV through their platform, and Ripple is one of the SPVs. Well, they provided me with a video that they did in their investor call privately yesterday, and they said that I could release it so that you guys can see it. And now what you're gonna watch, this is a talk, and I'll show you who these guys are. Bill Saras is the co-founder and CEO, and Joe Indoso is the CFO of Link. I'll make sure I'm saying that right. Link2. Okay, so these guys are having a discussion about Ripple and they're showing you how you go about investing on the platform, specifically in Ripple. It's a very interesting video. I hope you enjoy.
As individual investors, we don't usually get involved in pre-IPO unicorns, and you don't have access to them for your portfolio. We typically get shut out of this asset class because it's been the domain exclusively for large institutional investors. Link2 has been democratizing the secondary market space by making these investments affordable and accessible to the average investor with minimum investments as low as $10,000. So here today, we've got our own Joe Indoso, who's going to talk with us and discuss how you can engage in creating further diversification in your individual investment portfolios with unicorns. And also after that, and after our panel, we've got a great talk early this afternoon. First of all, Matthew will be back on after the panel. He's going to stick on and talk about blockchain co-investors. So you can think about investing in a blockchain fund of funds. And then after that, we've got Greg Kidd back, and Greg is going to be talking with the digital asset investor specifically about Ripple. Greg was first chief risk officer at Ripple, and he's going to come back and we're going to drill down very deep into XRP and Ripple in terms of Ripple as equity, not Ripple as its crypto XRP. So we got a lot of exciting things going on. Joe, welcome. Glad to have you back here today. How are you doing today?
Great. Although I'm absolutely intimidated after having heard Jesse and Lily. That was one of the most absolutely edifying and inspiring sessions I think we've had in our virtual conferences, Bill. And I think that's a really tough act to follow.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. I don't know if we need to just do a shuffle off to Buffalo here, but it's going to be difficult to follow that. Speaking about unicorns, just for the audience here, briefly, I think we all know what unicorns are, but maybe we start at the very beginning. What is a unicorn, and why are unicorns an important investment opportunity to evaluate?
So a unicorn is basically a private company that's achieved a valuation of $1 billion or more. And typically these are, as you might imagine, they're VC-funded tech companies. Why they're important is that in the last 20 years, these unicorns have grown into a huge asset class, right? Today, there's about 472 of these companies around the world, and their aggregate value is 1.3 trillion or thereabouts. That's huge. Also as important is that in those same 20 years, they've exhibited the fastest growth of any asset class in equities, and they've also achieved the highest returns. So from an investment perspective, that's super important. And it's the reason why more and more non-VC money is trying to get into these unicorns.
Excellent.
I should say too, because we have a whole bunch of people in our audience that maybe come from the crypto investing world, Bill, that when you look at these unicorns and you look at that aggregate valuation of 1.3 trillion, That's about 5 times the size of the crypto market today. Cryptos, while they've exhibited outside of equities a greater degree of return over the same 20-year period, what's different is that in that smaller crypto market, you also have a much higher degree of concentration, right? So even though you've got 5,000 or so cryptocurrencies today, the top 5 currencies in that market account for 83% of the total market value. So you have a lot less choice than you do in the unicorn asset class.
Good point. Good point. You know that we've been working a lot with getting some of the better unicorns in. We tend to specialize in the fintech side of the world and the crypto side of the world because that's what we know, blockchain and fintech. What unicorn investments are available currently on the Link2 platform?
We have 3 fintech unicorns on the platform today, Bill, and they're all US-based unicorns. So we've got Ripple, which is the biggest of the 3. They're about 10 billion in value. And then we've got Robinhood and Coinbase, each of whom are about 8 billion in value today. And in the coming months, hopefully, we'll be able to add even more unicorns to the Link2 platform and give our investors more choice and more diversification opportunity.
Explain for the audience here just a bit how the Link2 platform works. How does it benefit investors and how does it benefit unicorns? I mean, there's 2 sides to this equation, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the investment platform that we talk about, it's a technology that Link2 built, and it's primarily a mobile app that's meant to be really simple and easy to use. You know, one of our board members at the time, Matthew Lamerrill, who you'll hear from later today, was very, very visionary in that respect. He wanted something that was going to be easy for you to do on your smartphone. And that's kind of astonishing because, if anything, private market securities like these unicorn investments are typically very difficult and very complicated to transact in. So we wanted to build something that was very easy and simple to use. So when you get on that mobile app, basically, you get a couple of benefits, from using it to buy unicorns. Number one, the entry price is really low, right? So this is an investment class where typically you're not going to be able to invest unless you write a minimum ticket of 100,000, and that's about the lowest that you're going to see. On our platform, you can invest as little as $10,000, and be able to get exposure to unicorns. The second thing, and this is super important, is that the transaction process in the real world outside of Link2 is very, very complicated for a whole bunch of reasons that, we probably don't have the time to get into. But the bottom line is you typically have to put your money in escrow. You've got to wait for a significant period of time for consents to be gotten from the unicorn company. And if those consents are not gotten, and there's a bunch of reasons why that might be the case, you'll end up actually not being able to buy the unicorn to begin with, right? On our platform, when you see an offering, you know that stock is going to be available, and you're not going to have to put your money in escrow. You'll be able to close immediately as long as you're able to qualify as an accredited investor. And the third benefit, and this is, I guess, super important too, is that since you're buying these unicorns indirectly through an SPV that we use at Link2 to aggregate all the small investor capital, the units of that SPV are actually tradable. So they're liquid. And that means that if for whatever reason, after you make your investment, you decide maybe there's been a family need that requires cash, that you need to cash in your investment, you can actually offer that investment to other investors on our platform and liquefy it, which wouldn't be the case if you had the unicorn stock directly, because then you'd be illiquid. So those are some real important benefits to the investors. And then the issuers, the unicorns, like us because we make it really efficient, right, for the small ticket capital to flow onto their cap table. I mean, imagine if you're Ripple and you had to deal with thousands upon thousands of small investors. I mean, the cost of administering that, the legal liability, the administrative headache, and the fact that you'll probably at some point breach the SEC's limits on how many investors you can have as a private company. So we solve all those problems for the unicorn as well, while giving the sellers of the unicorn shares the ability to sell their shares in a very efficient way to small investors.
And so the space that you're talking about here, where we get it from, it's different from what we're used to with our small cap companies where they're doing primary raises the way they are today. Most of this investment comes in the secondary market. We're getting shares in that are acquired from early employees who may be looking to get a little liquidity for themselves while they're waiting for the IPO to happen. But that's not a new market. How does Link2 compare to companies like Forge and SharesPost, now all one company, Forge, SharesPost, or Equity Zen or Manhattan Ventures, or some of the others that are dealing in the secondary market space?
Yeah. So all those guys, not to disparage any of them, but they were all founded basically with a very, very different customer base in mind. They were set up to serve the very largest institutions that like to buy these unicorn shares in the secondary market because maybe they weren't quite big enough or quite close enough to the management teams of the unicorns to be able to participate in the primary offerings, right? But because of that sort of big institution focus, their product and their offering is geared towards those big institutions. So the average ticket size is large, typically an average of 5 million and multiples of that, which is well beyond the reach of the small accredited investor. And then you've got an investment process bill that has all of those complications we talked about, right? That happen when you want to hold the stock directly. Big institutions can afford to go through the process and the expenses associated with it. And the risk of not being able to actually close a transaction. But if you're a small investor, you're never going to do that. You're never going to put $10,000 in an escrow account, go through the expense of having it escrowed, and then end up 90 or 120 days later with your trade reverse because the shares ended up not being transferable because the company didn't give consent, or because the shares got ROFR'd. So they're offerings, investment offerings that are meant for big institutions, not for the small investor. At Link2, we're entirely focused on meeting the needs and serving the small accredited investor.
Great. So on the other side, I'm sure a lot of people are interested. We're always interested in exit of these companies that we're talking about. Which one do you think is closest to an IPO?
Well, it's not so much what I think as much as that of the three unicorns we talked about, Bill, Ripple's the only one, right, that's publicly announced their intent to do an IPO within the 2020-2021 timeframe. So,
so what does Ripple do? What does Ripple do?
So Ripple's an interesting company. They started out by creating a blockchain that's called the XRP ledger. And they specifically engineered this decentralized ledger system in order to enable various types of transactions that require a very high volume, low latency processing, and with a big level or a big security wrapper around it, right, to protect the transaction data. So that company, Ripple Labs, which is the Ripple Labs that we're offering on our platform, when they built that XRP ledger, they also decided to use it for a very specific use case that would benefit from all of those capabilities that they specifically engineered their blockchain for. And that use case basically is to process international payments, on the blockchain, right? They're able to do these international payments more quickly, in a much more inexpensive way than is currently being done by the legacy international payment systems that the big banks use. So that payment system is called RippleNet, and Ripple's been using that system. It's commercial. It's been adopted by over 300 financial institutions in over 40 countries around the world today, and that adoption continues to grow by the day.
So we have a number of crypto investors here today, and I'm sure a lot of them are already invested in XRP. What's the difference in investing in XRP versus the Ripple equity that we have on the Link2 platform?
Right. So when Ripple Labs built this XRP ledger, this blockchain, they also created a native cryptocurrency on it. And that's the XRP you're talking about, Bill. So XRP is something that Ripple uses when they run their transaction processes for the payment system. They use the cryptocurrency as a value transfer mechanism. And that allows these payment transactions to clear very rapidly and to settle very rapidly and at low cost on the RippleNet system. But what's happened to XRP is that it's also been listed, independent of its use on this payment system, it's been listed on a whole variety of crypto exchanges around the world. So investors can actually buy the cryptocurrency and effectively speculate on its future value, because the hunch is that as the use of this RippleNet payment system grows, the value of that cryptocurrency will also grow, right? And so think about it as being a commodity, XRP, with a life or a value independent of the system. And then Ripple Labs is using that cryptocurrency specifically as a component of this payment system and creating economic value through that.
Okay, excellent, Joe. And we do have some more information coming up after, I think it's at 1:45 today. The digital asset investor is here, a tremendous YouTube influencer, and he's going to be interviewing Greg Kidd directly. Greg was first chief risk officer at Ripple Labs. But just one final question before we leave and get on to Draper Venture Network. What's been the experience on the Link2 platform with Ripple so far?
Well, it's been by far the best selling of the unicorns on the Link2 platform. And, I reckon that's because there's been a lot of crossover investment, number one, on the part of XRP investors into Ripple, now that they have the opportunity to make a bet on Ripple in the same way that they're betting on XRP. They're doing so on the Link2 platform. And that's kind of smart, right? Because the XRP is a commodity, as we talked about, but Ripple is really the motive force, right? It's the company that's creating that commodity, but it's also commercializing or putting a commercial use case on top of that commodity. It's the difference between, investing in oil and also investing in ExxonMobil, or investing in diamonds and investing in De Beers. If you had the opportunity to do both instead of just one or the other, you'd absolutely do so, because then you'd expand the range of upside that you have. So our proposition to all of those XRP guys is, hey, we got Ripple on the Link2 platform. Come and join us and make that investment as well. So to answer your question, it's the best selling of our unicorns because of that crossover investment opportunity, Bill, and also because I think there is the anticipation of the IPO, right? The company's publicly announced that. So on a today basis, we are fast approaching 1,000 accredited investors in Ripple alone.
Excellent.
And, with the help of the investing public, hopefully that number is only going to go up, Bill.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your time today, coming back again.
Well, I hope that was an eye-opener for you. It was for me. I am the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that Link2 allows you a way to get exposure to Ripple in a very cool way that these guys have created. And it's a pretty exciting platform. Thanks for listening.